Hey, what's up? I'm Hikari Despair. In this video, I'll be giving my thoughts and rating each of the gettable characters in the Troupe Revue shop, the 4 schools that has an Arcana to get. I haven't had the chance to make this video when Emperor is going to be released in server. I'll give my thoughts on how good their kit was, giving only some words to remember the parts. I might give some of a little bit of the fact from them, and rating them, which was the best or the worst in the section of the game. I'll base on the sections by PvP, event bosses, and challenge review, since those are my specialties back then. Although there would be a missing section, but I believe that those missing ones could be related to one of the sections that I mentioned but twisted for a bit. Every characters will be rated equally by Rarity 6, Friendship Bond level 29 for max agility, rank 9.8 from the panels, level 80, and unit skill 1 because you can afford US 21 instantly. Without further ado, let's get started. First is the very first Arcana that we can get by using medal currency to buy her. It's Tower Hikari. Tower Hikari is a mid-row unit. Tower Hikari dominates the early stages of the Arcana meta on EN server the start of 2021. Tower Hikari's first act was a normal barrier to self. One fact that is an act 1 and is a 2 AP spammable when Tower Hikari was left in the battle and gaining much stacked shield. Her act 2 is a 2 AP perfect aim and dexterity to all allies. What makes it good is that she buffs everyone and then she deals high damage to one front enemy. It's better than you attack first then the buff. Imagine if you're dealing with blindness. Her Act 3 is the 3 AP mark to all enemies. Her Act 3 feels like an Amaterasu Hikari but brought to the future. That act was 3 AP pretty sure because Tower Hikari was the first card that gives mark to all enemies as normal act instead of climax act. For Tower's climax act, she gives 1 fortitude and 2 evasion to all allies. She deals damage first before she gives the utility. Since it's a very high damage, then the reflect barrier will counter the act, making your tower's HP depletes and unable to give the utility. One good thing about her climax act is her max agility, which is 1892, and the Arcana meta's usual agility was 2113. So when the turn ends with the finishing act, then you can evade that with just 1 evasion. As of her auto skills, Tower Hikari is good for damage buffing. You can give buffs instantly rather than just consuming a part of the turn to do it. Her buffs resemble the Seisho Stage Girl cards back then. Critical up from Stage Girl Maya, and Dexterity up from Stage Girl Juna. Next is for the one of the biggest simp in the game, Rui, her Hangman card. Hangman is a back row unit. Hagmanrui was like a blessing in which she had the best PvP kit back then. So far the best gettable in the shop when first released during the younger days of Arcana meta. Her Act 1 was a 2 AP special barrier. Basically the evil version of Tower, stackable and spammable when solo. Her Act 2 was an accuracy down and dexterity down to all enemies. This act is good too since it's like evasion rate but in the form of negative effect, but can be countered with perfect aim if you have no negative effect resistance beforehand or negative effect removal after that act. Her Act 3 was one of the 2 biggest worth of her kit. It's giving brilliance reduction and AP up to all enemies. If there was still a misunderstanding from the reduction, brilliance reduction is basically reducing your incoming brilliance recovery. Hangman's brilliance reduction rate was 80%. If you regenerate 20 brilliance like Fuliachi does, 80% was like 4/5. Then 20 times 4/5 will be 16 and subtract it to the 20 because the 16 is the value that will be reducted from the regeneration and the result will be 4 and you'll be regaining 4 brilliance. It's difference from reduced brilliance that you can see from the auto skills of the new cards like the current 2021 birthday card. She removes 50 brilliance from all of the enemies, not a percentage but a countable number. As for AP up, it usually goes when you give an effect in the current turn and always lasts on the next turn. AP up is a hindrance because all of your affected cards will increase the AP value of their acts. For example, your Climax act has 2 AP. And when affected by AP up, then it will be 3 AP. The turn only lets us use 6 AP worth and nothing more. Imagine if like Stage Girl Misora's Act 3 that were above for AP move and then she was affected by AP up and it will be 5. Hangman's climax act was very high damage to all enemies and giving freeze with high probability. I believe the probability was 50% when it's high probability, but still can deal damage even though it's not a guaranteed freeze. The freeze was only last during the turn, so it's not much, but still better for immobilization to the current turn when the enemy unleashes all of their climax acts. Other than that, her climax act gives exit evasion itself. Exit evasion was a turn duration effect that prevents your character to leave the battle one time. When the exit evasion was used, then you can't be protected from another death, but can guarantee your next climax act when the current climax zone ends. With some management strategies, the exit evasion is pumpable, but with a max HP like that, it's hard to make that HP management that gives perfection to your runs. I could agree that Sonokuyuki Yachio is better than Hangman when it's by management. As of her auto skill, she only gives 1 buff support for her allies, unlike Tower Hikari that gives 2 buffs. Just look at Hangman's auto skill 2, a passive for self rather than for everyone. Hangman's agility was 2113, that means she can compete with Arcana meta fairly, and just some agility management will turn the tables down. For the third one is the redhead of the Frontier School, the Nino Nakano in the school, Misora, her card Fate. Fate is a tank that gives a utility to heal and resist from negative effects. Arcana tanks are usually has an access to aggro from their normal act. Fate was like the merge of Misora's old card. She has been evolving by her counter heal. Her Snow White Misora has 3 AP counter heal to first 3 allies. Her Little Prince has a 3 AP counter heal to all allies. Little Prince counter heal was one of the best that ever existed. The best one was from Surin Ruruko that has 20% counter heal as an auto skill. I believe Little Prince counter heal heals by 15% of the affected allies' max HP, while the other ones were just 10% as usual. Counter heal triggers depending to how much hit was taken by an affected character. 5 hits, then 5 times the heal. But the downside of this effect is when the hit's damage is more than what the heal can do. For example, like Queen of Hearts Shizua's climax act, she only do 1 hit when she deals damage by her climax act. She has potential to make the counter heal useless at that situation. Do note that Queen of Hearts Shizua's climax act does a removal, but only the staff buffs, like the defenses, act power, critical, and dexterity buffs. Fate Misora's Act 1 was just dealing a normal damage to one front enemy. Never have been an Arcana tank that has a good utility from their Act 1. Her Act 2 gives counter heal to all allies by 10%. Her Act 3 gives aggro to all enemies. Every Arcana tank that existed to this point always has aggro from their Act 3, although the differences to each tank is that they give different extra effects to themselves. Fate gives normal and special barrier to herself. I believe that her barriers were half the amount of the towers and Hangman's barriers. Empress gives evasion rate and damage received down to self, and Charity gives counter heal and damage received down to self. For Fate's Climax Act, it's a single target damage and gives utility to all allies. The utility was damage received down and absorb. Absorb is like a lifesteal mechanic that you heal by doing your own damage. The heal is by a percentage of your total damage and it is stackable. Absorb mechanic is seriously a dead mechanic in PvP and maybe most of its use were on event bosses and challenge review. This mechanic is like if there was an unlimited turn, then no problem thing. The one unit that excels at absorb and very event bosses wise was Nurse Mayfan. She can only stack 1 absorb per turn, but the fact that her climax deals damage to single target is already enough to heal. And for the absorb unit that's mainly for PvP, it's Dracula Claudine, She has two normal acts that gives absorb to herself. Her climax act was very PvP wise and not much to deal damage to an event boss. A-Team really did a good job to revive this kind of mechanic, although it doesn't change the meta at all. But still, the support like this is a good enough as a non-spammable climax act when event bosses and challenge review. As for Fate's auto skills, gives a continuous positive effect that gives immunity from confusion, stun, and stop. I think these are good immunities. Confusion and stun are the usual negative effects that I see in PvP. For stuff, it's not that usual because there are those who give stop to all enemies, but they remove the continuous positive effects first before giving the stop, so it's a downside. These immunities are not permanent. As for Fate's agility, she has 1307. She will more likely to resist the effects after the auto skills has been take effect in the battle. It's better if Fate's agility can do a potential more than 2328, the best agility meta yet, so that she can apply the immunities and World Maya's auto skill that gives stop with high probability will be resisted. But sadly, Fate was released way more first than World Maya. So yeah. Now for the last one, the reason why I made a video was Emperor Akira. I predicted that Emperor will definitely be a shop gettable since it's like there must be one from each school that has a shop gettable to make it fair. What I see from Emperor Akira was her kit was almost the same as Charity Sukasa's, the best tank yet. I think she was released for the purpose for an alternate charity since charity was gacha gettable and it's hard if we're unlucky. Emperor Akira's Act 1 was basically a damage only act. Her Act 2 was AP up to all allies. Emperor was almost like charity, they both give AP up to all enemies, but the extra effect is they give barriers to all enemies. Emperor gives special 1 and charity gives normal 1. The amount is just 5,000, so not an impact to meta. Act 3 is the usual aggro. Emperor and Charity gives almost the same effects. Aggro to all enemies, damage received down to self. But Charity gives counter heal to self while Emperor gives evasion rate to self. As for the climax act, Emperor gives mark to an enemy with highest act power and deals very high damage to her and then gives both normal and special reflect barrier to all allies. 100% like charities. I believe the climax act was like from Stage Girl Claudine's climax act, except Claudine removes continuous positive effects rather than giving mark. As for the auto skills, Emperor and Charity has the exact same auto skill. Auto skill 1 gives 20% more HP to all allies as passive, means more tankiness. Auto skill 2 gives 1 resurrection to self. The first card to use this effect was the Tamao. She has resurrection from her auto skill and climax act. Resurrection was like the exit evasion, except you won't get that next climax act guarantee, just resisting your next battle exit. Auto skill 3 is the main point of their work. Aggro to all enemies for 1 turn. The first one to have this effect was Andromeda Shiori, which is a challenge review wise card, so people will less likely to pull. What makes this better is their agilities. If the max agility is higher, then she will trigger her auto skill effects first, which is why Charity and Emperor needs more agility by putting them a memoir that gives agility buff as passive. For example, the max bound break pirates memoir like this which gives 20% agility bonus as passive. Charity has 2008 max agility and Emperor has 1835 max agility as initial. Then if the buffs were applied, Charity will have 2248.96 agility while Emperor has 2055.2 agility. From my perception, the agility meta that usually has was 2113, 2328, 2085, and 2215. Cards being released per one of those four being the most usual or most dangerous agility. I was expecting for the rebirth feature to be affected from PvP but sadly no. If it was true, then Charity is all-time dangerous to every cards, while Emperor will be like Charity without the full rebirth. The main point of this agility check is for those auto skills that gives negative effects to their enemies, which is really bad. So in order 2328, 2215, 2113, and 2085. Charity can deal with almost everything except 2328. And so far there are no cards that were between 2328 and 2215 other than Charity Sukasa with 12% agility passive, and there are not much cards that lies on 2328 meta, so it's a good thing. 2215, 2113, and 2085 really has the worst when it comes to negative auto skills, and Emperor can't deal with it, so Emperor will be not much of good in PvP. But I've seen the database of the JP server. The best that Emperor can resist will be the upcoming Julia Chiori that gives love sickness to enemies, Romeo Koharu that gives blindness and reduce brilliance to enemies, that one Juna card that looks like Elsa, she can give AP up to 3 enemies from behind, so yeah, count it. And especially to the Aruru card, the Arcana one, the Moon Aruru, which reduces 50 brilliance to all Arcana units, and you can afford to not own an Arcana in these days. So yeah, 50 brilliance is already big, so yeah, Emperor can do it. Their stats might change when releasing EN, but still, yeah, these are my thoughts. I pointed out the parts that I see where I'm using from each of them. Now let's get into the sections. Okay, from PvP, this is my tier list for them. I picked Emperor Akira as the best because there will be an upcoming Moon Aruru and I'm already scared. Although Emperor would be no use of Aruru's evasion, giving away her auto skills, but still when you can initiate an aggro first, then you can avoid damage from your other cards. More survivability. For second, I picked Hagmanrui because of her negative effects kit, but it's hard to give a negative effect because the cards nowadays are spamming with negative effect resistance, and you need a card that removes those resistance first before giving the effects, like World Maya. Still pretty good damage dealer even though the negative effects had a high chance to become useless on most battles. For the third is Tower Hikari, since she can buff the damage and some strategies to perfect the placement of evasions and the perfect aim to counter some small mechanics during the battle. And for the last place was Fate Misora. She can heal, but I think these days our counter heal was like eating a breadcrumb. She can be the third because you can need a 1 Arcana tank for at least, but now Emperor was released, then no point. For event bosses, the first placer was Tower Hikari because her normal acts are really worthy of event boss wise situations. Just the Act 1 and Act 2 would suffice. And she can support others by buff damage. The second placer is Fate Misora. The immunities will be useful since those negative effects that she resists were deactivating your access to deal damage. There are others too, like freeze, but you can just let yourself get hit again and then unfreeze. And blindness, you just need a memoir that gives perfect aim, and you're ready to go. For the third placer is Hangman, because Hangman can give the negative effects, delaying the boss's brilliance meter, giving a chance to not hit. The negative effects gives a good word too. For the last place, Emperor Akira, the resurrection and aggro as auto skills are good. Her normal acts are good too, but I think only Act 3 was spammable, and the auto skills are meant to be selfish. Emperor's Act 3 was better than Fate's, but Fate can do more sports. Last section is for the challenge review. More Arcanas means more easier and faster to beat every boss in the challenge. The first one I recommend was Emperor Akira because of her auto skill, the aggro. Because of Percival that deals extreme damage first right before the turn 1 starts. There are currently 2 possible Percival to meet and it's less, but the word is good and it's like a quality first before quantity. The second one is Fate Misora because you can have an access to a tank and a good heal support. I use Fate for more dread and Arthur space, but in need of a counter heal even without element advantage. Fate being tanky is good enough. For the third, I pick Tower Hikari. She can buff although she doesn't deal much damage, but her word for Lancelot Snow and Galahad Snow is good, and you will encounter two Galahad Snow. That's just it. You can even do better by using full with Awakening Maya. So yeah, Tower is at the third place. And for the last place was Hagmanrui. She was not just at the last place because she has a PvP kit. Because she can give a buff all the time and only her auto skill that has a duration only does. True that she can make delay, but still it's just that. Her best work was when beating Tristan Flower. I did it with a Hangman and Stage Girl Hisame or Hangman with Death. There was also another flower bosses too, but the need of Hangman's kit was not needed and recommending older cards instead than her. I think that is all for this video. I'll leave this video forever if it ever helps someone, especially those who haven't got one of these 4 Arcanas in their account. If there would be another shop gettable Arcana, then it would be good as long as the kit is good, and I might not make a video of rating them 5 on tiering because I might retire before those upcoming will be released. That concludes in this video, and thanks so much for watching, and bye bye.